The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with activity. Beings from 100 different worlds moved about, their forms as varied as the stars in the sky. Some floated on cushions of air, others slithered across the polished floor, and a few even phased in and out of reality. This was the heart of galactic politics, where the fate of entire civilizations hung in the balance. At the center of it all stood Sarah Chen, the first human representative to the council. She looked around with wide eyes, trying to take it all in. Sarah was tall for a human, with short black hair and dark, determined eyes. She wore a simple blue suit, a stark contrast to the elaborate costumes of the alien diplomats around her. Quite a sight, isn't it? A voice chirped beside her. Sarah turned to see a small bird-like creature perched on a floating platform. Its feathers shimmered with all the colors of the rainbow. "I'm Zigzag," the alien said, extending a wing-like appendage. "Representative of the Avionis Confederation. You must be the human everyone's talking about." Sarah shook the offered wing gently. "Sarah Chen," she replied with a smile. "And yes, I suppose I am. It's all a bit overwhelming." Zigzag trilled a laugh. "Oh, you'll get used to it. Just wait until the council actually starts. That's when things get really interesting." As if on cue, a deep, resonating tone filled the hall. The various representatives began to move towards a massive circular chamber. "That's our cue," Zigzag said. "Come on, I'll show you to your seat." Sarah followed the floating alien into the chamber. Tiered seating surrounded a central platform, each section marked with the symbol of a different galactic nation or species. Zigzag led her to a small section marked with the flag of Earth. "Here you are," the bird alien said. "Good luck. And whatever happens, try not to show fear. Some of these old space dogs can smell it." With that cryptic advice, Zigzag fluttered off to his own section. Sarah took her seat, feeling very small and very alone. The chamber quieted as a tall, regal-looking alien took the central platform. Its skin was a deep purple, and it wore robes that seemed to be made of living starlight. "That's High Counselor Vexera," a gravelly voice whispered from behind Sarah. She turned to see a rock-like being, its surface covered in glowing crystals. "They've been running these meetings for the last 1,000 years." Sarah nodded her thanks for the information, then turned her attention back to Vexera. "Esteemed representatives," the High Counselor's voice echoed through the chamber. "We gather once again to discuss the matters that affect our grand galaxy. But first, let us welcome our newest member, Sarah Chen, representative of Earth. Please stand." Sarah felt her heart pounding as she rose to her feet. Every eye, or sensory organ, in the room turned to her. "Humanity," Vexera continued, "has shown remarkable progress in a short time. From discovering faster-than-light travel to establishing their first extrasolar colonies in mere centuries, we welcome their unique perspective to our council." There was a smattering of applause, along with various other signs of approval from the assembled aliens. Sarah gave a small bow before sitting back down, her face flushed. The meeting proceeded, with various representatives bringing up issues affecting their worlds. Sarah listened intently, trying to understand the complex web of galactic politics. There were trade disputes between the silicon-based life forms of the Crystalli sector and the methane brothers of the Zeta clouds. The aquatic mer tribes of Oceanus Prime were concerned about increasing acidity in their homeworld seas due to illegal dumping by off-world corporations. As the meeting went on, Sarah began to notice a pattern. Whenever a serious issue came up, many representatives would look towards one particular section of the chamber. There, on a raised dais, sat a being that radiated power and menace. The alien was massive, easily 3 times the size of a human. Its skin was black as the void of space, with points of light swirling beneath the surface like captive stars. A crown of twisted metal sat upon its head, crackling with energy. This, Sarah realized, must be King Krazax of the Zorth Empire. Every time Krazax shifted in his seat or made the slightest gesture, nearby representatives would flinch. Even High Counselor Vexera seemed to choose their words carefully when addressing issues that involved Zorth interests. As the meeting neared its end, Krazax finally spoke. His voice was deep and resonant, seeming to come from everywhere at once. "Esteemed Council," he rumbled, "I have an announcement to make." The chamber fell silent. Sarah could feel the tension in the air, thick enough to cut with a knife. "The glorious Zorth Empire has decided to expand its borders," Krazax continued. "We have set our sights on the Novarian system. Their resources will be a valuable addition to our realm." Murmurs broke out across the chamber. Sarah leaned towards the crystalline being behind her. "What does that mean?" she whispered. "It means," the alien replied, its voice heavy with resignation, "that the Novarians are about to lose their home. The Zorth don't ask permission. They take." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She looked around the chamber, expecting to see outrage, protests, but all she saw were downcast eyes and slumped shoulders. Even High Counselor Vexera seemed at a loss for words. "If there are no objections," Krazax said, a hint of smug satisfaction in his voice, "then the Zorth Empire will begin its glorious expansion immediately." The silence in the chamber was deafening. Sarah couldn't believe what she was seeing. An entire civilization was about to be conquered, and no one was saying anything. Before she even realized what she was doing, Sarah Chen, representative of Earth, rose to her feet. "I object," she said, her voice ringing out clear and strong. Every head in the chamber turned towards her. She could feel the weight of 1,000 alien gazes, some curious, some fearful, and one, burning with cold fury, from the Zorth King himself. In that moment, as she stood alone against a tyrant who had cowed an entire galaxy, Sarah Chen realized that humanity's journey among the stars was about to take an unexpected turn, and the Galactic Council would never be the same again. Tyrant King's Ultimatum. The silence in the Galactic Council chamber was deafening. All eyes were fixed on Sarah Chen, the human representative who had dared to object to King Krazax's announcement. The air crackled with tension as the Zorth ruler slowly turned his gaze towards her. "You object." Krazax's voice was low and dangerous, like the rumble of an approaching storm. His eyes, black as the void with pinpricks of starlight, narrowed as he focused on Sarah. Sarah felt her heart pounding in her chest, but she stood her ground. She took a deep breath and spoke, her voice surprisingly steady. "Yes, Your Majesty. I object to the invasion of Novaria. The Novarians are a peaceful species. They have done nothing to provoke this action." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Many representatives looked at Sarah with a mix of awe and fear. Some even inched away from her, as if afraid Krazax's wrath might be contagious. The Zorth King rose from his seat, his massive form towering over the other representatives. He descended from his dais, each step echoing ominously through the chamber. As he approached Sarah, the crowd parted like a sea before him. "Tell me, little human," Krazax said, looming over Sarah, "do you know why the Zorth Empire has stood for 10,000 years? Why our word is law in half the galaxy?" Sarah swallowed hard, but met the king's gaze. "Because you take what you want by force," she replied. A low chuckle rumbled from Krazax's chest. "Precisely. We take because we can. Because we are strong. The Novarians are weak. Their resources will serve a greater purpose under Zorth rule." "But that's not right," Sarah argued. "The Novarians have rights. They have a culture, a history. You can't just." "Can't I?" Krazax interrupted, his voice booming. He turned to address the entire council. "Who here will stop me? Who among you has the power to challenge the Zorth Empire?" The chamber was silent. Representatives squirmed in their seats, avoiding eye contact with both Krazax and Sarah. High Counselor Vexera finally spoke up, their voice gentle but firm. "Your Majesty, perhaps we could discuss this matter further. A diplomatic solution." "There is nothing to discuss," Krazax snapped. "The decision has been made. The Zorth Empire will expand. Novaria will fall." Sarah felt a surge of frustration. She looked around at the cowed representatives, beings from advanced civilizations, all too afraid to speak up. In that moment, she made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Earth will stand with Noveria, she declared. The chamber erupted in shocked gasps and excited whispers. Krazax turned back to Sarah, his expression a mix of amusement and irritation. "You? Stand against me," he scoffed. "Your species has barely left its home system. You have no fleet, no army that could hope to challenge the Zorth." Sarah stood tall, channeling all the determination and courage of humanity. "We may be new to the galactic stage, Your Majesty, but humans have a long history of standing up to bullies. We won't sit idly by while you destroy an innocent civilization." Krazax's amusement faded, replaced by cold anger. "You dare call me a bully? I, who have brought order to chaos, who have uplifted countless primitive worlds." "You've enslaved those worlds," Sarah countered. "That's not order, it's oppression." The Zorth King's eyes flashed dangerously. For a moment, Sarah thought he might strike her down right there in the council chamber. Instead, he threw back his head and laughed, a sound that sent chills down the spines of everyone present. "Very well, little human," Krazax said when his laughter subsided. "You wish to play at war? Then let us play. I will give you and your pitiful allies one standard galactic month to prepare. After that, the full might of the Zorth Empire will descend upon Noveria. We shall see how long your courage lasts when faced with real power." With that, Krazax turned and strode out of the chamber, his guards falling in behind him. As soon as he was gone, the council erupted into chaos. Representatives argued loudly, some praising Sarah's bravery, others condemning her foolishness. High Counselor Vexera called for order, their voice cutting through the din. Once the chamber had quieted, they addressed Sarah directly. "Representative Chen, while your courage is admirable, I fear you may not fully understand the consequences of your actions. The Zorth Empire is not an enemy to be taken lightly." Sarah nodded, the weight of her decision settling on her shoulders. "I understand, High Counselor, but someone had to take a stand. We can't let fear rule us." Vexera's expression was unreadable. "Perhaps, but now you have committed your planet to a conflict it may not be prepared for. What do you plan to do?" Before Sarah could answer, a voice called out from the crowd. "Rithor stands with Earth and Noveria." It was Zigzag, the bird-like alien Sarah had met earlier. Another voice joined in. "The Mer tribes of Oceanus Prime offer our support as well." This came from a tall, elegant being with shimmering scales and webbed hands. More voices followed, pledging support and resources. Sarah felt a surge of hope. They weren't alone in this fight. As the pledges of support continued, Sarah's mind raced. She needed to contact Earth immediately, to explain the situation and start preparations. They would need ships, weapons, strategies. But more than that, they would need allies, diplomacy, and innovation, areas where humans excelled. "High Counselor," Sarah said, turning back to Vexera, "I request an emergency session of the Council. We need to organize our defense of Noveria and discuss strategies to counter the Zorth threat." Vexera nodded solemnly. "Granted. We will reconvene in 1 standard hour. I suggest you use that time to contact your government, Representative Chen. They will need to be informed of the situation." As the council members filed out of the chamber, many stopped to speak with Sarah. Some offered words of encouragement, others warnings about the power of the Zorth. A few even shared information about Zorth military tactics and weaknesses. Sarah's communicator buzzed. It was a priority message from Earth's government. Taking a deep breath, she answered the call. "Madam President," she said, "we have a situation." Over the next hour, Sarah explained everything to the president and her advisors. To her relief, they supported her decision, though the gravity of the situation was not lost on anyone. "We'll begin preparations immediately," the president said. "But Sarah, you should know, this won't be easy. We're going up against an enemy with technology far beyond ours. I know, Madam President, Sarah replied. But we have advantages too. Our adaptability, our creativity. And we won't be fighting alone. As she ended the call, Sarah felt a mix of fear and determination. She had just committed humanity to its first interstellar war. The stakes couldn't be higher, not just for Earth or Noveria, but for the entire galaxy. If they could stand up to the Zorth and win, it would change the balance of power forever. But first, they had to survive. Sarah made her way back to the council chamber, her mind already working on strategies and alliances. As she entered, she saw representatives huddled in groups, discussing the coming conflict in hushed tones. Many looked up as she passed, some with respect, others with skepticism. She took her seat just as High Counselor Vexera called the emergency session to order. Representatives, Vexera began, we face a crisis unlike any in recent memory. The Zorth Empire threatens not just Noveria, but the very principles of galactic cooperation and peace. Representative Chen has taken a bold stand, and others have joined her. Now we must decide how to proceed. The next few hours were a flurry of activity. Plans were proposed, debated, and refined. Resources were pledged, and strategies were developed. Sarah found herself at the center of it all, coordinating between the various species, trying to forge a cohesive alliance out of a group of disparate civilizations. As the session wound down, Sarah felt a glimmer of hope. They had the beginnings of a plan, and more importantly, they had unity. Species that had been bitter rivals just hours ago were now working together against a common threat. But as she looked around the chamber at her new allies, Sarah couldn't help but wonder, would it be enough? The Zorth Empire had conquered hundreds of worlds, defeated countless armies. What chance did they really have? Then she remembered something her grandmother used to say, the only way to guarantee failure is to not try at all. Sarah straightened her shoulders and raised her voice to address the council one last time. Friends, allies, we face a daunting challenge. The Zorth Empire is powerful, yes, but they are not invincible. They've grown complacent in their power, arrogant. We have something they don't: diversity. Each of our species brings unique strengths to this fight. Together, we are stronger than any one of us alone. She paused, looking around the chamber, making eye contact with as many representatives as she could. 1 month from now, we will meet the Zorth in battle. It won't be easy. We may not win. But by standing together, by fighting for what's right, we've already changed the galaxy. No matter what happens, the Zorth Empire will know that they can no longer bully and conquer without consequence. And that, my friends, is a victory in itself. A cheer went up from the assembled representatives. As it died down, High Counselor Vexera spoke. Well said, Representative Chen. May the stars watch over us all in the coming conflict. They turned to address the entire council. This emergency session is adjourned. Go now, prepare your defenses, gather your forces. In 1 month, we make our stand. As the representatives filed out of the chamber, many stopped to shake Sarah's hand or offer words of encouragement. She thanked them all, her mind already racing with plans and preparations. The next month would be crucial. They needed to transform a loose alliance into a fighting force capable of standing against the most powerful empire in the galaxy. It seemed an impossible task, but as Sarah looked at the determined faces around her, she felt a surge of hope. Humans had a saying, where there's a will, there's a way. Now it was time to show the galaxy what humanity's will could accomplish. The battle for Noveria, and perhaps the future of the galaxy, was about to begin. Human diplomacy and strategy. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity for Sarah Chen. As the de facto leader of the alliance against the Zorth Empire, she found herself at the center of a complex web of diplomacy, strategy, and preparation. Sarah's first stop was Noveria itself. The Noverians were a peaceful agrarian species. Their world was a lush paradise of rolling hills and crystal-clear lakes. When Sarah's ship touched down in their capital city, she was greeted by a delegation of Novarian leaders. The Novarian Prime Minister, a tall, willowy being with iridescent skin, bowed deeply to Sarah. "Representative Chen, we cannot thank you enough for your support, but we fear we have little to offer in this fight. We are not warriors." Sarah smiled reassuringly. "Prime Minister, every species has its strengths. Your world is rich in resources that we'll need for this war, and your people's knowledge of agriculture could be crucial for feeding our troops and maintaining supply lines." The Prime Minister's eyes widened. "We had not considered that. Perhaps we can be of use after all." This became a pattern as Sarah visited world after world in the coalition. Each species doubted its ability to contribute, but Sarah's unique human perspective allowed her to see potential where others saw only limitations. On the methane world of Zeta 9, Sarah convinced the gaseous inhabitants to form stealth scouting units, their natural ability to change density making them nearly invisible to Zorth sensors. The silicon-based Crystali, with their living crystal technology, were enlisted to develop advanced communication systems that the Zorth couldn't intercept. Even the aquatic mer tribes of Oceanus Prime found a role. Their natural affinity for three-dimensional thinking made them excellent strategists for space combat. But perhaps Sarah's greatest diplomatic triumph came in an unexpected place. During a strategy meeting on Earth, she had an idea. "What about the Grok?" she asked her advisors. Admiral Zhang, Earth's top military commander, looked at her in surprise. "The Grok? But they're not even part of the Galactic Council. They're isolationists. No one's had meaningful contact with them in centuries." Sarah nodded. "Exactly. Which means the Zorth probably haven't either. The Grok are known for their advanced technology. If we could convince them to join us, or even just share some of their tech, it could turn the tide of the war." The room was silent as everyone considered this. Finally, Admiral Zhang spoke. "It's a long shot, but at this point, we need every advantage we can get. I'll arrange a ship for you." 2 days later, Sarah found herself approaching the mysterious Grok homeworld. It was a planet unlike any she had ever seen, covered in massive geometric structures that seemed to defy the laws of physics. As her ship entered orbit, a booming voice filled the cockpit. "Human vessel, you are not welcome here. Leave immediately." Sarah took a deep breath and opened a channel. "I am Sarah Chen, representative of Earth and the coalition against the Zorth Empire. I come seeking the wisdom and aid of the great Grok people." There was a long pause. Sarah held her breath, hoping her appeal to their ego would work. Finally, the voice returned. "You may land. Follow the designated path precisely." Sarah's ship was guided to a landing pad atop one of the massive structures. As she stepped out, she found herself face to face with a Grok. The being before her was like nothing she had ever seen. It seemed to be made of pure energy, constantly shifting and changing shape. 2 glowing points of light served as eyes, fixed intently on Sarah. "I am Zix, speaker for the Grok consensus," the being said, its voice resonating in Sarah's mind rather than her ears. "Why have you come to our world, human?" Sarah straightened her shoulders and met Zix's gaze. "I come seeking help. The Zorth Empire threatens to destroy the peace of our galaxy. We need your advanced technology to stop them." Zix's form flickered, a sign Sarah interpreted as agitation. "The affairs of lesser species do not concern us. We have removed ourselves from your conflicts." With respect, Sarah countered, "This conflict will affect you whether you participate or not. If the Zorth succeed, how long before they set their sights on your world?" The Grok was silent for a long moment. Then, to Sarah's surprise, it began to laugh. The sound was like crystal chimes in a strong wind. "You are bold, human. It has been long since any being dared to speak to us so directly." Zix's form stabilized, taking on a more humanoid shape. "Come. The consensus will hear your plea." Sarah found herself in a vast chamber, surrounded by hundreds of energy beings like Zix. She told them of the Zorth threat, of the Coalition's efforts, and of humanity's determination to stand against tyranny. As she finished, the chamber erupted in a cacophony of mental voices. Sarah couldn't understand them, but she could feel the intensity of the debate. Finally, Zix turned to her. The consensus has reached a decision. We will not join your war directly, but we will provide you with technology that may aid your cause. Sarah's heart leaped. Thank you. This could change everything. Zix held up a hand. Do not thank us yet, human. Our aid comes with a condition. If you fail, if the Zorth Empire defeats your coalition, we will withdraw from this galaxy entirely. The consequences of this will be significant. Sarah swallowed hard. The pressure on her shoulders just got even heavier, but she nodded firmly. I understand. We won't fail. As Sarah left the Grok homeworld, her ship laden with advanced technology beyond her wildest dreams, she allowed herself a moment of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they had a chance after all. But there was no time to rest. As soon as she returned to Earth, Sarah threw herself into integrating the new Grok technology with the Coalition's existing resources. The work was challenging. Many of the species had trouble working together, their different biologies and cultures leading to frequent misunderstandings. But Sarah found that humans had a unique talent for bridging these gaps. It's because we're so diverse ourselves, she explained to Admiral John one day. Our planet has thousands of cultures, languages, and ways of thinking. We're used to finding common ground with those who are different from us. The Admiral nodded thoughtfully. I never thought our planet's divisions would be an advantage in space. As the day of the Zorth attack drew nearer, the Coalition's preparations intensified. The Grok technology allowed them to develop shields that could withstand Zorth weapons and engines that could outmaneuver Zorth ships. But Sarah knew technology alone wouldn't win this war. They needed a strategy that would take the Zorth by surprise. She spent long hours poring over historical Earth battles, looking for inspiration. Finally, she found it in an unexpected place. The ancient Battle of Cannae, where Hannibal had defeated a much larger Roman army through clever tactics. Sarah called a meeting of the Coalition's top strategists. Beings from a dozen different species crowded into the war room on Earth's moon base. The key, Sarah explained, pointing to a holographic display of Noveria and the surrounding space, is to let the Zorth think they're winning at first. We'll have a small force engage them here, then appear to retreat towards Noveria. She manipulated the hologram, showing Zorth ships pursuing the Coalition forces. Once they're committed to the chase, we spring the trap. Our main fleet, hidden behind Noveria's moons, will emerge and surround them. The Zorth will be caught in a three-dimensional double envelopment. There was a moment of silence as the assembled strategists considered the plan. Then the room erupted in excited chatter. Admiral John clapped Sarah on the shoulder. It's risky, he said, but it just might work. The Zorth are used to overwhelming their enemies with brute force. They won't expect this level of subtlety. As the meeting broke up, Sarah felt a mix of excitement and dread. The plan was in place. The Coalition was as ready as it could be. Now, all they could do was wait for the Zorth to make their move. The night before the Zorth's deadline, Sarah couldn't sleep. She found herself wandering the corridors of the moon base, eventually making her way to the observation deck. As she stared out at the stars, a voice behind her made her jump. Trouble sleeping. Sarah turned to see Zigzag, the Avionis representative, perched on a railing. The bird-like alien's feathers were ruffled, a sign of agitation. Yeah, Sarah admitted, hard to relax knowing what's coming. Zigzag trilled softly, a sound Sarah had come to recognize as laughter. You humans are strange. You throw yourselves into danger, yet you fear it at the same time. Sarah smiled. I suppose we are a bit contradictory. It's not a bad thing, Zigzag said. It's what makes you such good leaders. You understand fear, but you don't let it rule you. They stood in companionable silence for a while, watching the stars. Finally, Zigzag spoke again. Whatever happens tomorrow, Sarah Chen, know that you have already changed the galaxy. You showed us that it's possible to stand up to the Zorth. Win or lose, we will remember that lesson. Sarah felt a lump in her throat. Thank you, Zigzag. That means a lot. As the Avionis fluttered away, Sarah took one last look at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Zorth fleet was preparing to attack. But for the first time in a long time, they would face real opposition. Tomorrow would decide the fate of Noveria, of Earth, and perhaps of the entire galaxy. But tonight, under the light of countless stars, Sarah allowed herself to feel something she hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. Whatever happened, they had done all they could. They had stood up for what was right, and in doing so, they had already won a victory that the Zorth, for all their power, could never understand. As she turned to head back to her quarters, Sarah whispered a quiet promise to the stars. We won't let you down. The battle for the galaxy was about to begin. Galactic War. The day of reckoning arrived with a bang. Literally. Sarah Chen was jolted awake by the sound of alarms blaring throughout the moonbase. She rushed to the command center, her heart pounding in her chest. Admiral Zhang was already there, his face grim as he studied the holographic display. The Zorth fleet has entered the Novarian system, he reported. They're earlier than we expected. Sarah's mind raced. How much time do we have? At their current speed, they'll reach Noveria in 6 hours, Zhang replied. Sarah nodded, taking a deep breath to steady herself. Then we stick to the plan. Alert our forward units. It's time to spring the trap. As the coalition forces scrambled into action, Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of unreality. After weeks of preparation, it was hard to believe the moment had finally arrived. The first reports from the battlefield came in quickly. The Zorth fleet was massive, easily outnumbering the coalition forces 3-1. Their ships were sleek and deadly, bristling with weapons that could reduce a planet to ash. But the coalition had surprises of its own. The first engagement went exactly as Sarah had planned. A small force of coalition ships, led by the nimble Avionis fighters, engaged the Zorth vanguard. They put up a good fight, even managing to destroy a few Zorth cruisers before appearing to break and flee towards Noveria. From the command center, Sarah watched the holographic representation of the battle with bated breath. Everything hinged on the Zorth taking the bait. For a heart-stopping moment, the Zorth fleet paused. Then, with a surge of movement, they gave chase. They're going for it, Zhang breathed, a note of disbelief in his voice. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Hannibal would be proud. Now for Phase 2. As the Zorth fleet pursued the retreating coalition forces, they failed to notice the sensor ghosts hiding in Noveria's asteroid belt. These were the gaseous beings of Zeta 9, using their natural abilities to mask the presence of the main coalition fleet. The Zorth pressed their attack, confident in their superior numbers and firepower. They never saw the trap until it was too late. As the Zorth fleet approached Noveria, the coalition sprung its trap. Ships burst from hiding places all around the planet. The crystalline vessels, nearly invisible against the backdrop of space, decloaked and opened fire. Mertried cruisers rose from the oceans of Noveria, their unconventional tactics catching the Zorth off guard. And at the heart of it all, the Earth fleet, armed with Grok technology that the Zorth had never encountered before. The space around Noveria erupted into chaos. Energy beams crisscrossed the void, missiles streaked between ships, and fighters engaged in dizzying dogfights. From the command center, Sarah directed the battle alongside Admiral Zhang and representatives from the other coalition species. Her human ability to think creatively and adapt quickly proved invaluable as they responded to the Zorth's tactics. But the Zorth were not easily defeated. As the initial shock of the ambush wore off, they began to rally. Their superior numbers started to tell as they pushed back against the coalition forces. "We're losing ground in Sector 7, reported a Mertribe tactician, her holographic image flickering with static. "Redirect the Crystalli fleet to reinforce that sector," Sarah ordered, "and have the Zeta-9 scouts search for weaknesses in their formation." The battle raged for hours, a deadly dance of ships and energy weapons. Both sides took heavy losses, but neither was willing to back down. As the fighting entered its fifth hour, a new threat emerged. A massive ship, easily twice the size of any other vessel in the Zorth fleet, dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. "It's the Zorth King's personal battleship," Zhang said, his voice tight with tension. "If it joins the battle, we're done." 4. Sarah stared at the holographic representation of the enormous ship, her mind racing. Then, an idea struck her. It was crazy, possibly suicidal, but it might just work. "Get me a direct line to that ship," she said. Zhang looked at her in surprise. "You want to talk to them now?" Sarah nodded grimly. "Trust me." Moments later, the imposing figure of King Krazax appeared on the main screen. His star-flecked eyes narrowed as he recognized Sarah. "Ah, the little human who dared to challenge me," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "Have you called to surrender?" Sarah met his gaze steadily. "No, Your Majesty. I've called to challenge you." Krazax's expression flickered with surprise before settling back into a sneer. "Challenge me? To what, pray tell?" "Single combat," Sarah replied, her voice unwavering. "You and me. If I win, you withdraw your forces and leave Novaria in peace. If you win, the coalition surrenders." The Zorth King laughed, a booming sound that echoed through the command center. "You must be joking. Why would I agree to such terms when victory is within my grasp?" Sarah smiled coldly. "Because you're not as close to victory as you think. Our ships are equipped with technology you've never seen before. We can keep this fight going for days, maybe weeks. You'll win eventually, sure, but at what cost? How many ships will you lose? How much of your empire will slip through your fingers while you're bogged down here?" She leaned closer to the screen. "But if you beat me in single combat, you win it all right now. You prove to the galaxy that you're as powerful as you claim to be. Isn't that worth the small risk of facing one insignificant human?" Krazax was silent for a long moment, considering her words. Finally, he nodded. "Very well, human. I accept your challenge. Prepare yourself. We fight in 1 hour." As the screen went dark, the command center erupted in protests. "You can't do this," Zhang exclaimed. "He'll kill you." Sarah held up a hand for silence. "It's our best chance. While I keep him distracted, I need you to prepare our secret weapon." Zhang's eyes widened in understanding. "The Grok device. But it's untested. We don't know if it'll work." "We're out of options," Sarah said grimly. "It's time to take a leap of faith." An hour later, Sarah found herself aboard the Zorth King's massive battleship. She had been allowed to bring one weapon of her choice. She had chosen a simple metal staff, much to the amusement of the Zorth guards. The arena was a vast chamber at the heart of the ship. Krazax stood at the far end, his massive form dwarfing Sarah. In his hand, he held a crackling energy sword. "Are you ready to die, little human?" he growled. Sarah gripped her staff tightly. "I'm ready to fight, Your Majesty. Are you?" With a roar, Krazax charged. Sarah barely managed to dodge his first swing, the energy blade passing so close she could feel its heat on her face. She knew she couldn't match the Zorth King in strength. Her only hope was to use her agility and human unpredictability to her advantage. As Krazax swung again, Sarah ducked under his arm and jabbed her staff into his side. The blow would have crippled a human, but it only seemed to annoy the massive alien. The fight continued, a deadly dance of swings and dodges. Sarah managed to land a few more hits, but none seemed to slow Krazax down. Meanwhile, every near miss from his energy sword left scorch marks on her suit. As the battle wore on, Sarah found herself tiring. Krazax, on the other hand, seemed as fresh as ever. She knew she couldn't keep this up much longer." Then, just as she was about to make another desperate attack, her communicator buzzed. The signal she had been waiting for. With a burst of energy, Sarah charged straight at Krazax. The move caught him by surprise, and she managed to slip past his guard and slam her staff into his knee. The Zorth king roared in pain and anger. As he raised his sword for a killing blow, Sarah activated the hidden switch in her staff. A blinding light filled the chamber. When it faded, Sarah and Krazax found themselves no longer on the battleship, but floating in open space near Noveria. Krazax's eyes widened in shock. "What sorcery is this?" he bellowed. Sarah grinned, despite her exhaustion. "Not sorcery. Science. Grok science, to be precise. A little teleportation device they cooked up for us." Before Krazax could respond, a shimmering energy field surrounded them both. Sarah's smile widened as she recognized the familiar outline of an Earth shuttle decloaking nearby. "Looks like my ride is here," she said. "Oh, and you might want to take a look at your fleet." As the shuttle's tractor beam pulled them in, Krazax turned to see his mighty armada in disarray. Dozens of ships were adrift, their systems shut down by the same Grok technology that had teleported Sarah and Krazax off the battleship. Inside the shuttle, Sarah stumbled as artificial gravity took hold. She found herself face to face with Admiral Zhang. "Good timing," she managed to say before collapsing into a seat. Zhang nodded, his eyes fixed on the furious form of Krazax, now restrained by an energy field. "It worked. I can't believe it actually worked." Sarah allowed herself a triumphant smile. Never underestimate human ingenuity, or human stubbornness. As the shuttle made its way back to the Coalition fleet, Sarah watched the battle unfold through the viewscreen. With their king captured and many of their ships disabled, the Zorth forces were in chaos. The Coalition pressed its advantage, pushing the once mighty Empire back. Sarah knew the war wasn't over. The Zorth Empire was vast, and they would not take this defeat lightly. But for the first time in centuries, they had been forced to retreat. The galaxy now knew they weren't invincible. As Noveria grew larger in the viewscreen, Sarah felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her. She had faced down the most powerful being in the galaxy, and against all odds, had emerged victorious. But more than that, she had proved that humanity had something unique to offer the galactic community. Their adaptability, their creativity, their willingness to stand up for what was right. These were strengths that could change the course of history. As her eyes drifted closed, Sarah allowed herself a moment of pride. Humanity had taken its first steps onto the galactic stage, and they had done so not with conquest or subjugation, but by uniting diverse species against a common threat. The galaxy would never be the same again, and neither would humanity. The battle was won, but the war for the future of the galaxy was just beginning. And Sarah Chen, the human who had dared to challenge a tyrant king, would be at the heart of it all. New galactic order. The days following the Battle of Noveria were a whirlwind of activity. As news of the Zorth Empire's defeat spread across the galaxy, systems that had long lived under the shadow of Zorth oppression began to rebel. The once mighty empire was crumbling from within. Sarah Chen found herself at the center of it all. The human who had stood up to King Krazax, and one had become a symbol of hope for countless beings across the galaxy. 2 weeks after the battle, Sarah stood before the Galactic Council once again. The chamber was packed, with representatives from hundreds of worlds in attendance. Many were species that had never before dared to speak in the council. High Counselor Vexarek called the session to order, their voice resonating through the chamber. "We are gathered here today to discuss the future of our galaxy in light of recent events. Representative Chen, as the architect of the coalition that defeated the Zorth, we would hear your thoughts on how we should proceed." Sarah took a deep breath as she stepped up to the central platform. The eyes of the galaxy were upon her. "Members of the council," she began, her voice steady and clear. "The defeat of the Zorth Empire marks a turning point in our shared history. For too long, we have allowed fear and complacency to guide our actions. We have stood by while tyrants oppressed entire worlds, telling ourselves it wasn't our problem. She paused, looking around the chamber. But we have proven that when we stand together, we can overcome even the mightiest foe. Now we have a chance to build something new. A galactic community based not on fear and domination, but on cooperation and mutual respect. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Sarah continued, her confidence growing. I propose we form a new organization, not to replace the Galactic Council, but to work alongside it. A coalition of worlds dedicated to mutual defense and support. Any world that joins would pledge to come to the aid of other members in times of need. In return, they would receive the protection and support of the entire coalition. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some representatives voiced enthusiastic support, while others expressed concerns about sovereignty and resource allocation. Zigzag, the aviomnus representative, fluttered up to a speaking platform. And who would lead this coalition? You, Representative Chen. Sarah shook her head. No. I believe the coalition should be led by a council, with representatives from all member worlds. No single species should hold too much power. This statement seemed to allay many fears. The debate continued for hours, with representatives arguing over details and propositions. Through it all, Sarah stood firm, answering questions and addressing concerns with a patience and wisdom that belied her species' relative youth in galactic affairs. As the session neared its end, High Counselor Vexera called for a vote. All those in favor of forming this new coalition, as outlined by Representative Chen, signify your approval. The chamber lit up with affirmative signals. It wasn't unanimous, but it was an overwhelming majority. Vexera nodded solemnly. Then it is decided. The coalition will be formed. Representative Chen, we task you with overseeing its creation. As the council session adjourned, Sarah found herself surrounded by well-wishers and potential allies. It was a far cry from her first appearance before the council, when she had stood alone against the Zorth. Over the next few months, Sarah worked tirelessly to bring the coalition to life. She traveled from world to world, meeting with leaders and citizens alike, explaining the benefits of joining and addressing concerns. One particularly memorable visit was to the Grok homeworld. The energy beings had been reclusive for so long that their decision to join the coalition sent shockwaves through the galaxy. As Sarah stood before the Grok consensus, Zix, her old acquaintance, addressed her. You have surprised us, Sarah Chen. We did not expect your species to have such an impact on galactic affairs so quickly. Sarah smiled. We humans have a habit of exceeding expectations. I hope we can continue to surprise you in positive ways. Zix's form shimmered in what Sarah had come to recognize as amusement. Indeed, the consensus has agreed to join your coalition. Moreover, we will share more of our technology with the other members. It is time we took a more active role in galactic affairs. This was a huge win for the coalition. The Grok's advanced technology would be a significant deterrent to any future would-be conquerors. But not all of Sarah's diplomatic missions went so smoothly. On many worlds, she faced skepticism and outright hostility. Some species distrusted the idea of closer cooperation, fearing it would lead to a loss of autonomy. On the desert world of Xathor, the local chieftain spat at Sarah's feet. Why should we trust you, human? Your kind are newcomers to the stars. What do you know of galactic politics? Sarah met the chieftain's four-eyed gaze steadily. We know that division makes us weak. We know that there will always be those who seek to dominate others. And we know that standing together is the best defense against such threats. She gestured to the harsh landscape around them. Your people have thrived in one of the most unforgiving environments in the galaxy. Imagine what you could achieve with allies to support you, with access to new technologies and resources. The chieftain was silent for a long moment. Then, grudgingly, he nodded. You speak well, human. We will consider your offer. It wasn't a resounding victory, but it was progress. Sarah had learned that in diplomacy, small steps could lead to great changes. As the coalition grew, new challenges arose. With so many diverse species working together, misunderstandings and conflicts were inevitable. Sarah found herself playing the role of mediator more often than not. One particularly tense moment came when the silicon-based Crystalli accused the methane-breathing Zeta-9 of sabotaging their communication arrays. "Their gaseous emissions are corroding our systems," the Crystalli ambassador insisted. The Zeta-9 representative rippled indignantly. "Our natural processes are not a weapon. We cannot help our biology." Sarah stepped in before the argument could escalate further. "This is exactly why the coalition is so important," she said. "Instead of accusations, let's look for solutions. Perhaps the Grok could help develop a coating for the Crystalli systems that would protect them from corrosion." Both parties grudgingly agreed to this proposal. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start. These sorts of compromises and creative problem-solving became the hallmark of the coalition under Sarah's guidance. Slowly but surely, a new galactic culture was emerging, one of cooperation and mutual understanding. But even as the coalition flourished, new threats loomed on the horizon. The Zorth Empire, while greatly diminished, was not entirely defeated. Rumors spread of a growing resistance movement led by loyalists to the deposed King Krazax. Moreover, other powerful empires that had stayed neutral during the Zorth conflict were now watching the coalition's growth with wary eyes. Some saw it as a threat to their own power and influence. Sarah knew that the coalition would face many challenges in the years to come, but as she looked at what they had already achieved, she felt confident that they could face whatever the galaxy threw at them. 1 year after the Battle of Noveria, the coalition held its first full assembly. Representatives from over 1,000 worlds gathered on a newly constructed space station that orbited a neutron star at the galaxy's heart. As Sarah took the stage to deliver the opening address, she couldn't help but reflect on how far they had come. From a single act of defiance in the Galactic Council chamber to this moment, it had been a journey beyond anything she could have imagined. "Friends, allies, fellow citizens of the galaxy," she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast assembly hall. "1 year ago, we proved that we are stronger together than we ever could be apart. We faced down the greatest threat our galaxy had ever known, and we emerged victorious." She paused, looking out at the sea of faces, each unique, each representing a different world, a different culture, a different perspective. "But our work is far from over. We have laid the foundation for a new era of peace and cooperation, but it is up to all of us to build upon that foundation. We will face challenges. There will be those who oppose us, who fear change, who seek to return to the old ways of domination and fear." Sarah's voice grew stronger, filled with passion and conviction. "But we will not falter. We will not back down. Together, we will forge a future where every being, regardless of their species or origin, can live free from fear and oppression. A future where the wonders of our galaxy are open to all who seek to explore them. A future where our differences are celebrated, not feared." She raised her hand, gesturing to the star-filled space visible through the station's massive windows. "Look out there. The galaxy is vast, filled with mysteries and marvels beyond our imagining. But the greatest marvel of all is right here in this room. The fact that we, beings from 1,000 different worlds, can come together like this, can work together towards a common goal, can dream together of a better future." Sarah's voice softened, but it carried no less power. "That is the true strength of this coalition. Not our weapons or our technology, but our unity. Our shared vision of what the galaxy can be." She straightened, her eyes shining with determination. "So let us go forward from this day with hope in our hearts and unity in our purpose. Let us show the galaxy what we can achieve when we stand together. For our worlds, for our peoples, for our shared future." As Sarah finished her speech, the assembly hall erupted in cheers and applause. Beings of all shapes and sizes, from worlds spanning the breadth of the galaxy, rose as one in a show of solidarity. In that moment, Sarah Chin, the human who had dared to challenge a tyrant king, who had united a galaxy, felt a sense of awe and humility. This was bigger than her now. It was bigger than humanity. It was the dawn of a new age for all species. As she looked out at the cheering crowd, Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The journey ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, setbacks, and dangers yet unknown. But looking at the unity before her, she knew one thing for certain. The galaxy would never be the same again. And that was a good thing. The new galactic order was just beginning. And humanity, once a small overlooked species from a backwater planet, was at the heart of it all. The future, vast and unknown as the space between stars, awaited them. And Sarah Chen, along with countless others across the galaxy, was ready to face that future, together.